that it? Can anybody see me? Please tell me somebody can see me. Oh gosh. Anyway, if you can see me, welcome to my little. Well, I call it my music room. It's a gorgeous sunny day here on Mersey Island. Ta-da! Oh right, thanks, Miles. That's brilliant. So you can see me. So next to me is my CS80, which is the one that I've been rabbiting on about for a while now because it's such an amazing instrument. And so this little test was to see how many people had questions or wanted to um, know a bit more about it. So I'm at your beck and call. There's a few people I know here, which is really nice. Thank you very much for dropping in. Miles, thank you. You came and helped us out at one of our rehearsals. I've seen Jim go by, Derek, Richard, lovely. Hope you and Brian are okay. Dinah and Steve, brilliant, up north there. Right, good question from Blue Dog International. How often do I have to get the CS80 serviced? Right, let me tell you some of the things that it does. Every so often it has these real quirks, and so I will try and demonstrate. So it does these Right, there was one. It does a little funny note in between other notes. Now, that's not a problem. That's part of the character, and I really like it because it kind of, I can blame the CS80 for a mistake I've made. But the tuning, I've had to put this, I put it on just after 3 o'clock. I needn't have bothered because the whole thing was late. The tuning just takes time to settle down. And if you've seen some of my explanation videos, it goes through this cycle of 7 notes, even though it's 8 notes polyphony. So, very long answer to the question. Essentially, you could get it tuned every 6 months. What I do is about every 10 years at the moment because it's not going out on the road. It's sitting here. When it came back from John and Jenny Sharp, it was in a fantastic place, and it's probably the most stable I've had it for a long time. So there you go. That's that question. I've actually got an iPad here, but I can't get that screen with all the comments on. So let's see. Right. Hi, David. Good to see you. Right. Somebody says Thunderbirds seem to start the show. That's a very nice thought. Not really possible. Carry me home. Rob Halligan, our good mate, he's covered that on one of his albums, and he's done a really splendid job of that. So that's really nice. It's interesting that one of the things I haven't said on the videos I've done is how different territories have a certain album that they particularly like, and part of it is the time that we were going in the band. So the Signs of Change album, for a while with a certain fan base, if you don't mind me calling you that, they loved Signs of Change, and it's what they kind of got to know the band with. But when we changed the style to the more power pop new wave, we got a whole new set, a much larger set of supporters. And so in the UK, it's the Laser Love album. And then in Germany, as we were starting to get discovered, it was the 1980F, the ATF album. And 1980F was so popular over there. And it's still popular. It's in terms of sales of downloads and streams, it's by far the biggest next to Der Kommissar. Right, let's have a little look. Did you install the mini kit? I think you might mean, oh, hi, Dr. Neil, good to see you. I think you might mean the MIDI kit, and the answer is no. I can give a short answer to that one. Way. Very interested in it though, because I'd love to be able to have a sequence that played the CS80 from recording it on Pro Tools, a MIDI file, or Logic Pro, which I've just bought. Right, Miles, you've got a couple of questions for me. I can see you've got it now, Blue Dog. Well done. Display space, intro, suspended animation, deliberate. Sorry, it's not about keys. Display space. Miles, you're going to have to say something about what you mean by display space. You consider doing the swing version of Dancing in the Shadows with a real sax. Ooh, okay. Well, Andy Piercy's re-record of Dancing in the Shadows did have real saxophone, and if you have delved into the depths of some of the ATF unreleased material, say on the 82F CD or album, that has sax on the version of Stand By Me we did, which has a slow part and then a faster part, and that has a sax solo where it joins the two parts. Right, Mark, I'm waiting for your comment about the display space. I'm intrigued by that. And that bass riff, I absolutely love that bass riff, which I said on one of my wee videos. So it's fantastic. There's loads of you coming on now. That's absolutely brilliant. Sam wins because my son Sam and I had a little, not a wager, no money was involved. We just had a competition to see who would get the closest number, and he wins by far because he said 20 and I said 5. Just being my humble, modest self as always. And okay, let's have another question. Yeah, so the swing version of Dancing in the Shadows. Yeah, that's an interesting idea, isn't it? I don't know whether anybody has spotted what James Weaver and I have done in Café Musica, but we've taken a couple of songs and radically changed them. One of them is Time to Think. And what we've done is we've done that on piano, so it's got a nice gentle feel. And the idea with Café Musica, we do try and interpret songs that are, I suppose you'd call them covers, but we're doing some of our material, and we're doing a couple of ATF songs, and we've done a Rob Halligan song, and so we like to work a way of making a song, particularly if it's well known, not that I would say Time to Think is well known, particularly if it's well known, making it quite a lot different. So changing the speed, I mean, that would hardly be called swing. And we did Dark Side, which we relabeled I'm Not an Angel, which was a song, again, another song from 82F. And we got Rob Halligan down to sing on that one because he'd done it a few times. All right, there's some more comments coming in. The unreleased 80F do I understand there is at least one acetate with regional press that take one. Any plans to release a limited number? Well, that's quite a painful topic. I will try and explain why. Yes, I've got a couple of acetates. I've got a side 1 and side 2 acetate, and I've also got some run off 1/4 inches of the masters. It's not a plan we have, and the reason is that it was such a painful period for the band. What happened was we finished the album, and we'd recorded it with Nick Brotherwood mainly on drums. We'd also used some technical drums with Tony Mansfield. We had a great time with him and Pete, with Tony Mansfield and Pete Hammond. He was the engineer. We loved the finished album, but we were called into a meeting at CBS, and we sat around this huge boardroom table, and we were basically told the album's not good enough. And we went away and wept, frankly. It was absolutely soul destroying when you've put your heart and soul into this. And at the same time, we were going through a breakup because we'd lost Ivor, had left us in the end of towards the end of 1979. We got Nick in the band, and that sadly, even though we were huge mates with him, it just didn't gel. So we had to go through parting with a great friend and someone who we'd got to pull out of a job that he was in. So that was really, really an uncomfortable time in the band. So it's a sense of, we felt we moved on after that when we had Mac, the producer, and Pete King came into the band, and he made such a difference, and we were happy again. And so it's one of those things, regardless of the merits of the album, and there are some good songs on there that didn't make it into the final Mac produced ATF. Regardless of the merits, it's too uncomfortable for us as a band to do anything with it. There is no inclination, shall we say. So I hope that's answered that. Again, a bit of a long one. So what else have we got? So are you not Billy No Mates? Thank you, Diane. I hope life is good up north. Suspended animation. The bass starts with a riff that starts with D on beat 1, but when the drums come in, the bass is playing the same riff, but beat 1 is the G. Ooh, oh, well spotted. Yeah, so yeah, you're absolutely right. Never thought of that before, Miles. Brilliant spot. Yeah, I don't know, that it kind of works. It's such a wonderful. It is a wonderful riff. Thank you for that comment. Right. See, I'm gonna have to. I'd love to see a Rarities collection. Ooh. 12-inch version of Life in the City. Yeah. That was probably in the. They did actually come out with as a Tony Mansfield production, because although we met Tony, we weren't working with Tony when he did that remix. He was given the master tapes, and he went and sprinkled the magic on those recordings, and the 12-inch came back, and that was the task, to come up with the 12-inch, and we were really loved it. That would be a good one to find. So yeah, I don't think it made it on to the somewhere. I've got the albums here. I don't think it made it onto the. Did it make it onto the Dear Commissar? No, you're right. Yeah, that would be a good find because it was great. And then we were so happy with the 12-inch. There was a later version of the 7-inch, which was Tony's remix, and then we went into the studio with him, and we had a great time down in Tooting, a long old way home from there back to Walthamstow. But yeah, good times and bad times in a band. That's the thing. Okay, let me have another little look. How much of an influence with Keith Emerson? Well, of all the big virtuoso keyboard players, Keith Emerson was certainly the one that I had the most respect, and he was an inspiration. Influence and inspiration, I think, are two different areas, and so he wouldn't have necessarily influenced the way I played because I wasn't classically trained. I replicated classical arpeggios and things, but to me, my playing was all a little bit smoke and mirrors. People thought I was good at what I did, but it was fairly straightforward. It wasn't really smart, clever playing. It was efficient and it was precise. And I think that's different to Keith Emerson was all those things, but he was a brilliant virtuoso player, and he could play pretty much any style, any classical style. He put a piece of music in front of him, he could fluently read music. And I can tell you the story now because obviously it's now impossible to meet him. But when Zipcodes were working together, Keith was managed by the same manager, Brian Lane, and Keith was due down in the management office, and I said, oh, I'd love to meet him, and they said, oh no, he'd be pleased to meet you. So I hung around. An hour went by, an hour and a half went by. They said, oh no, he'll be here in a minute. Another 2 hours went by, and then I was in that whole zone of thinking, well, if I leave, he's going to walk through the door. But time, it's getting later and later, and then in the end, there was only one person left in the office, so I thought I'm going to have to go home, and thankfully he was quite a while, so I didn't feel so bad. It's just that he was one of those people I would have liked to have met that I didn't. There we go. So let's have another little look. I'm really sorry about this. I had this extra screen and I couldn't get this page on it. Right, okay, 12-inch, right, we did that little one. Aha, Spirit Shadow, just worked out who you are, and Boutros. That's very kind, Dr. Neil, your comment there. I really think that is not the case. My first synth was a Moog, and it was a Mini Moog Model B. Beautiful, fantastic synth, horrendous tuning. If there's a song called Choice, I think we did, which is on one of the downloads, and there's this little bit where I tuned the Moog into fourths. It's so dire, the tuning, it's so over-tuned. Right, yes, certainly remember playing the Half Moon Putney. Oh, Graham, thank you. That's a very nice comment. I think you might have shared that before on one of my videos. The inspiration for the solo in Life in the City. well, I can't remember. All I do remember is all I remember is that I just had this. I just played it, and it was this kind of soaring synth sound that we had on the Moog. That's not the Moog. That's a dummy keyboard and slightly sideways shift. I'm going to start cleaning off the contacts in the back of the Moog so I can use it, but see, I can't. I have to play it all so to get it to work. So that won't be high enough. That's too low. I'm so sorry. It's so embarrassing. Yeah, I can't blame the CS80 for that one, can I? Okay. Do you favourite recently released modern analog synths? There are some very interesting synths coming out, and the CS80, I was persuaded by Yamaha to take this beast up to Synthfest last year. I think it was October time, and it was a revelation to me because I've not been in a buying mode, if you like, a checking instruments out mode, and I suppose it was all the analog synths, these small modular synths, that it was just a brand new world. I just hadn't twigged, even though I was buying Sound on Sound magazines occasionally. Just penny had not dropped. So I do think that's very interesting. Additionally, there are some great synths coming out or are out now. One of them is the Hydra synth. I don't know if people have heard of that. That has got the full polyphonic aftertouch that the CS80 has got, which so that's just the pressure, and that's rare in an instrument that is not really pricey, because this was very pricey at the time. So the Hydra synth, that's one to look out for. That was the star. Apart from the CS80, that was the star of the show at Synthfest. Yamaha have some hybrid synths that are a mixture of analog and digital control, which seems to be the way ahead. They were pretty amazing, but I was so busy, so people were so keen to see this. I didn't really have a chance to test it out too much. Okay, let's have a little look. Ford Green. So David Smith, you remember the Ford Green gig in Leeds? That was one of the ones when Nick played drums, well remembered. Right, let's come down. Could you press and hold as many keys as possible and pitch strip it down? Sounds silly, but nobody's done it on YouTube yet. As many keys as possible and do a... Okay, we'll try that. Okay, so as many keys as possible. Now that's going to be tricky. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll just get, if my son's listening to it, checking it in the control room. Perhaps you come in here, Sam, so that we can try that, because I think we'll want the full 8 notes to do that. An interesting thing about that, which I will share with you as you've asked so nicely. Let me get the old sustain pedal. What's interesting is I find it interesting. If you have the sustain going, and I've whacked that up, if you have the sustain going, it makes no difference at all. If you have, if you do the chord but hold the note, one note, well, let's whack that. No effect. So that's just holding on one note in the chord. Right, we're now going to try with my beautiful assistant, Samuel Banks. We're now going to try, we're going to do 8 notes, Sam, and then I'll do, so if you do, okay. So if you do the E, do the C chord, yeah? Okay. There you go. So it works with the full, thank you, sir. It works with the full 8-note polyphony. So you're getting 16 notes with the 2 banks of 8 notes each. You're getting that. So I hope that answers your question now. Have you Take Me Higher? Okay, David. Yeah, Take Me Higher solo. Now that I never played it the same because it was kind of improvisation until we got to the bits where John and I shared the lead parts. Then we had to have a semaphore when I'd got to that bit, and then we would play those unison or alternate parts, call and answer parts. So yeah, I couldn't possibly play it. I wouldn't even remember. What key was it? Anyway, yeah. Right. Somebody asked a question. What other vintage synths have impressed you apart from the CS80 and Moogs? Well, I had an emulator once. That was a sample one, so that was a bit later. Vintage synths, I went through a lot. I had a Wasp, which went back. I had one of those blue synths that went back. The Prophet was pretty good. I guess the Jupiter 8 would be my other choice synth. We used the Jupiter 8 a lot on batteries, and I would have probably bought one. And we rented one in for their commissar session, so it's doubled. The Moog bass is doubled with a Jupiter 8. Now, somebody asked a question: have I ever had a go with a Fairlight? Yes. The Zipcodes album is nearly 3/4 done on Fairlight. So a lot of the drums are samples, which are making a collection of parts of Pete's drums sampled, and then making them so that the real drums, we could guts them up a lot more. Sam Banks, oh, he was here just now. Where did you buy those? I can't remember exactly where we bought them, but it was in, no, I can't remember, but we did roam around the shops. It was probably in the West End. Yeah, it would have been in the West End. The Epic release album, ATF in 1998 contained the original version of One Rule and Dancing in the Shadows, with a 12-inch release from the album containing both songs with different versions. Yeah, well, both songs were re-recorded. Andy re-recorded them in 1983. I think it was 83. And that's what I mentioned. There's a sax, a bit of sax on Dancing in the Shadows. And again, One Rule was going to be the B-side. I did think it was a strange idea to make Dancing in the Shadows an A-side in the US when the Dancing in the Shadows had been the B-side to Der Kommissar. I didn't think that was a wise commercial decision, but hey, I wasn't around then. Sam says, am I going to play 1980F or 1984F? Well, you're going to have to spot the difference. Maybe I'll do that towards the end. You can tell me if it's none of my business, but do you still get any royalties? Ah, well, extraordinarily, we had our very first record royalties literally about at the end of March. So that's however many years since. So we were signed in 78. So a lot of years ago, 40 odd years ago. And it's taken all that time to recoup the debts that of the recording costs and everything. So yeah. So that was really nice and made us all feel pretty special. And yeah, so wasn't a huge amount of money, and we don't expect it to be because the deal was a bit dodgy. Right, let's have a little look here. Radical change in styles. Right, I do talk about that on one of my videos, and still need to hear Zipcodes again, somebody said. Oh yeah, Oberheim. Yes, yes, I was a fan of the Oberheim. I thought that was nearly came close to buying a Oberheim expander at one point. Hi Jane, I do hope you're well. That's lovely to hear from you. Oh John, hi. Maximum popularity, Richard. Well, there were moments when it was really nice to be recognised and people to want to know you. It was great. But there were downsides in that at times there was no let up when there was a hint of something about to happen. You carried on and you did more, and in our case we just ran up more and more debt with the record company and with the management. With the management, it was a real debt in that we would have to pay that back. With the record company, it was a recoupable debt, so we didn't have to pay it back, and now it's finally recouped. So, for instance, in 1982, we went on tour with ELO. We came back, we recorded Der Kommissar and a new version of Starflight. We then went out to Europe again with Queen. We then went back out to do some of our own dates in Germany. We went out to the US, touring with Van Halen. We came back absolutely shattered and exhausted, but Der Kommissar had started to trickle out, so we were immediately flown out to Sweden, and we did some gigs there and record company things, and it's just relentless when something's happening, and we were so broke. Yes, it was very difficult. I did see a question going past, which I just referred to, about the changeover. That's in the side one about Laser Love video on the channel. I can see either Mr. Keith Smith or Mrs. Keith Smith or Mr. and Mrs. Keith Smith. Okay, I'm not saving lives on the high seas anymore because I've retired from the Coast Guard. So, but I'm still by the sea. It's wonderful. Do you have any regrets? Big question, James. At times, yes. Again, that was an incredibly painful experience in the band when we finally drew to a close. Very difficult. Yes, I have regrets in that I think we had something that we could have gone on and we would have had a career. I don't know how long that would have lasted. I'm not sure about that because there were things that came up, and obviously the worst thing was Pete sadly succumbing to cancer. That would have just been 4 or 5 years down the line if we managed to keep going, and he was ill before that, of course. However, we were in a bit of a muddle. We were in a muddle financially. We had all sorts of record company issues, and yes, we were very, very broke. So I found my feet, still did music, and the others did, but it was a very painful time, and completely accentuated by Pete's demise. So hope that answers. Anyway, folks, look, I've actually gone on longer than I said. That I hope that I know there's one question here about the Phoenix US gig, which became a little bit legendary. When we were on tour with Van Halen, what happened was, if an audience showed a little bit of hostility, which they did because they really wanted to see Van Halen and not this upstart band from the UK, the crew would come into the dressing room afterwards if we had anything thrown at us, which we had a lot thrown at us. They'd come into the dressing room afterwards and say, "Hey guys, wait till you get to Phoenix." And it was this legendary gig that every support band is bottled, coined, is they try to get them off the stage, and it's how long a band can last. Well, we made it through. We only had 7 or 8 songs in the opening set, support song. We got through to 4 songs, so we did gain quite a lot of respect from the crew that had warned us. It happened again. As soon as the Phoenix gig was over, and I can't remember the sequence, whether it was Phoenix before El Paso in right near the Mexican border in Texas, and the rumor got round, well, if they don't like you, that it's curtains for you guys, and it was partly tongue in cheek, but also the crew and the band, everybody was really friendly towards us, and there was a kind of, they were quite protective towards us, and we got to this gig in El Paso, and I'm not kidding you, it was in a giant cattle shed. There were no seats. The crew had cut down the Van Halen rig because it just didn't fit in between all these pens for the cattle. It was dusty, the dung dust flew up in the air, and yet we played and we had the best reception probably of the whole tour, and it was heartwarming and brilliant. And we were told afterwards that so many Mexican people, some people had waded across and swam across the Rio Grande and were paying for the ticket in cash with wet pesos. So extraordinary night. So there you go. Well, look, I'll end on that, and thank you so much for dropping by and sticking with me and my pontification. Do let me know if you want to have a rerun or if you want me to play some bits. I'll just play a little bit of 1980F. I'm not sure I can remember 1984F. And well, we'll see you next time. So bless you. Right, how's that one? How does the other one go? Thank you all. Thank you so much, everybody. Please do subscribe to the channel if you've not already done so, and let me know if you would like a rerun. Cheers, everybody, and stay safe in these very strange times. God bless you. Right, got to figure out how to switch you all off. Oh, thanks, Dr. Neil. Okay, cheers all.